Alright, so the Michael Jackson biopic just dropped. And let me tell you, before the movie even hit theaters, it was already giving us more drama than a full Hollywood season. We're talking about scenes being cut at the last minute. A director going on record saying he doesn't believe the allegations. The release getting pushed back, not once, but multiple times. Sapsfers, fans online debating whether this whole thing is worse than the Tupac movie. And Neverland Ranch, yes, that Neverland, getting completely transformed just to shoot this film. There is a lot to unpack here. When the casting news first came out, people were excited. Kat Graham, best known for playing Bonnie in The Vampire Diaries, was announced as Diana Ross. And that made complete sense. Diana Ross and Michael Jackson had one of the most iconic friendships in the history of music. They shared stages, they co-starred in The Wiz, and Ross was so close to Michael that he reportedly wrote her into his will as the person who should care for his children if his mother was no longer around. That's not a casual friendship. That's family. So, naturally, fans were looking forward to seeing that relationship play out on screen. Kat herself was thrilled. She publicly called it a privilege and talked about how honored she was to be part of telling this story. Then, one day before the movie opened, she posted something on social media that stopped everyone in their tracks. She said, "Certain legal considerations affected a few scenes, including the ones I filmed with an incredible cast. Unfortunately, those moments are no longer part of the final cut." And just like that, Diana Ross was completely gone from the film. Now, Kat didn't go into detail about what legal considerations meant, but when you put the pieces together, it starts making a lot of sense. The film went through massive, expensive reshoots because of a legal clause in a decades-old settlement. We'll get into the full details of that in a moment, and those reshoots changed the entire structure of the movie. Scenes got removed, storylines got rearranged, and somewhere in all of that, the Diana Ross material ended up on the cutting room floor. Here's what makes this even more interesting. Diana Ross isn't the only major woman in Michael's life who's missing from the film. Janet Jackson? Not in it. She personally asked not to be included, and the director honored that request. The eldest Jackson sister, Rebby, also absent. Michael's daughter Paris Jackson didn't want to be involved either, and even called an early draft of the script sugar-coated. So you've got a biopic about one of the most famous men on the planet, and almost every significant woman in his life is either cut or never included in the first place. Now, there's still a small window of hope for Kat's fans. Some people are wondering whether her scenes might show up as bonus content on a home release, unless the same legal issues that got them cut from the movie would also block that. Nothing's been confirmed yet, but it's something to watch. What's not up for debate is the bittersweet feeling Kat must have after filming those scenes, building excitement about the role for over a year, and then having to announce the day before release that none of it made it in. That's rough. Now let's talk about how this movie had the most chaotic journey to theaters you can possibly imagine. This biopic was originally supposed to come out in the spring, then they pushed it to fall, then they pushed it again. By the time it actually landed in theaters, it had been delayed so many times that fans were starting to wonder if it was ever going to arrive. Filming was first delayed because of the big Hollywood strike in 2023, which shut down productions all over the industry. That pushed the start of filming into early 2024. Things seemed to be back on track, until they weren't. After filming wrapped, the team went into post-production, and that's when everything blew up. Here's the situation. The original version of this movie included a whole third act centered around the 1993 allegations made against Michael Jackson by a then 13-year-old accuser. That storyline was a major part of the film. It shaped the entire structure. The movie was built around it. Then, during post-production, attorneys for the Jackson estate discovered something they had somehow missed before. There was a clause buried in the old settlement from that case, and that clause specifically prohibited the accuser from ever being depicted or mentioned in any film or television project. Ever. So everything involving that storyline had to go, and that meant the film needed to be rebuilt from scratch, essentially. They went back for 22 additional days of filming to shoot entirely new material. The estate reportedly paid tens of millions of dollars out of pocket for those reshoots. because the oversight was on their end. During an earnings call, the studio's CEO confirmed that the film was being moved out of their fiscal year entirely, meaning it was being pushed past the end of March. And sure enough, the film eventually landed on its final release date, April 24th, well over a year after it was originally supposed to come out. To put it simply, this wasn't just a scheduling issue. The delays were a direct result of a legal mistake that forced the entire back half of the movie to be torn apart and rebuilt. The scheduling language was the polished version. The reality was far messier. And yet, despite all of that, the movie opened to over $200 million globally in its first weekend. The biggest opening ever for a music biopic. So the chaos didn't stop the box office. Not even close. This one stirred up serious conversation. Antoine Fuqua, the director behind Training Day and The Equalizer, sat down for a major profile interview, and he said something that people are still talking about. When asked about the multiple allegations of child sexual abuse that were made against Michael Jackson over the years, Fuqua made it clear he's skeptical. He doesn't fully believe them. His words, "When I hear things about us, Black people in particular, especially in a certain position, there's always pause." He also added, "Sometimes people do some nasty things for some money." Fuqua went on to say that he never actually met Michael Jackson. He missed the opportunity to direct one of MJ's music videos, and Jackson died before they could connect. But even without a personal relationship, Fuqua clearly came to his own conclusions about the man he was making a film about. He also brought up a comparison that a lot of people found interesting, pointing to Elvis Presley's relationship with Priscilla, who was only 14 when they met. His point was about the double standard in how Black artists versus white artists have historically been treated when it comes to public scrutiny and scandal. Now, to be fair, Fuqua also made clear that the original version of the film, before the reshoots, actually did try to tackle the allegations head-on. The movie was going to open with the famous 1993 police raid on Neverland Ranch. Fuqua himself described filming a scene where Michael was stripped naked, treated like an animal, a monster, during that raid. His original vision wasn't a soft, feel-good portrait. It was darker and more confrontational. But once the legal issues forced that material out, the whole tone of the film shifted, and Fuqua had to pivot hard. He told the press that his reasoning was, if you start the movie with the accusations, people who don't already know Michael's full story are going to be confused. The arc was too extreme. You need to take the audience on the journey first. Show them who he was, where he came from, what shaped him, before you can get to the complicated parts. He described Jackson as a superhero on the stage and said the film needed to honor that first. Critics, however, weren't buying it. Several major reviewers called the film sanitized.